What if I told you that most world-changing events weren't driven by ideas, or elections, or even wars, but by families, not countries, not voters, not revolutions, families, names you've heard, names you haven't, bloodlines that span centuries, quietly shaping who rules, propaendes. Do I need jai befides quidis? End up taparen who loses, and the most unsettling part, they don't need power anymore, because they've already won. Stay with me, because once you see it, you can't unsee it. We're raised on a comforting story. History, we're told, is shaped by great moments, a revolution, an election, a charismatic leader, a brave uprising, the people rise, the tyrant falls, the world changes. But that version of history is edited, because behind almost every turning point the same last names keep reappearing. In banking, in land ownership, in political marriages, in corporate boards, history doesn't reset, it inherits, and the biggest lie isn't that elites exist, it's that they ever disappear. Let's rewind. Imagine history not as a series of disconnected events, but as a living thread, one that stretches back through centuries, weaving its way through every era, every upheaval, every so-called revolution. The story of power is not about sudden breaks, but about subtle transformations. Ancient Rome didn't fall because people got tired of emperors. Power simply changed costumes. The collapse of the empire wasn't the end of influence for Rome's elite. Instead, it was a clever pivot, a shift from the marble halls of the Senate to the candlelit chambers of the church and the counting rooms of early banks. Senatorial families became church leaders, trading togas for robes and scepters for crosses. Landowners, once the backbone of Roman wealth, evolved into financiers, quietly pulling strings behind the scenes as the world changed around them. Military dynasties married into religious authority, blending the sword and the sermon. The same bloodlines, the same ambitions, just new titles and new ways to hold on to power. These families understood that survival meant adaptation, not resistance. Fast forward to medieval Europe, where castles rose from the mist and cathedrals pierced the sky. The landscape changed, but the game remained the same. Keep power in the family no matter the cost. Royal houses didn't rule alone. They intermarried, forging alliances that were as strategic as any battle plan. Every marriage was a contract, every child a potential heir to more than just a throne. If you trace European monarchies, you don't see dozens of competing families. Instead, you find a handful of names, endlessly intertwined, their roots tangled together in a dense, inescapable web. You see a tight web, the Habsburgs, the Bourbons, the Romanovs, the Windsors. These dynasties didn't just survive, they thrived, expanding their reach across continents and centuries, shaping the fate of nations with every union and every birth. They didn't conquer with armies alone. They conquered with marriages, with signatures on parchment, with whispered promises in candlelit halls. The battlefield was often a banquet table, the weapon, a wedding ring. Borders weren't drawn by wars, they were drawn in bedrooms and contracts. The fate of entire kingdoms could hinge on a single night, a single signature, a single union between two powerful houses. And when monarchies started to fall, the families didn't vanish, they rebranded. Today, you'll find their descendants in boardrooms, in politics, in the world's most exclusive circles. The names may have changed, but the bloodlines and their instinct to adapt remain unbroken. Here's where it gets uncomfortable. The story of power isn't just about kings and queens or the grand palaces they once ruled from. It's about what happened when those crowns fell, when the world's most visible rulers were swept aside by revolution, and the old order seemed to crumble overnight. But the families behind those crowns didn't simply vanish. Instead, they adapted, quietly shifting their influence from thrones to something far more enduring. When revolutions toppled kings, dynasties didn't fight back. They stepped aside. The world watched as palaces were stormed and statues fell, but behind the chaos, the real power was already moving, out of the spotlight, into the shadows. Why? Because political power is loud. It's the kind that draws crowds, sparks protests, and fills the streets with noise. But financial power? That's different. It's quiet, almost invisible, operating behind closed doors and in hushed conversations. And quiet power lasts longer. It weaves itself into the fabric of society, outliving governments, revolutions, and even empires. As monarchies weakened, powerful families shifted into new arenas: central banking, trade, monopolies, industrial ownership, and debt financing. They learned to control the flow of money, not just the laws of the land. Suddenly, they didn't need to rule nations. They could fund them. With a signature or a loan, they could shape the fate of entire countries, quietly pulling the strings from behind the scenes. And if you fund a government, you don't need to win elections. You don't need to stand on a balcony and wave to the crowds. You don't need popular support. You don't need to make speeches or promise reforms. Your influence is silent, but absolute. You don't need public approval. You just wait. While politicians come and go, and public opinion shifts with the wind, your power endures. Patient, persistent, and often unnoticed. Empires rise. Empires fall. Debt remains. In the end, it's not the crown or the scepter that survives. It's the ledger, the contract, and the quiet accumulation of wealth that truly shapes history. But wait, you might say, what about modern billionaires, tech founders, CEOs, self-made legends? Here's the trick. Some are new money, but most aren't new power, because power isn't just wealth, it's access, networks, legal immunity, and long-term insulation. Many self-made elites married into old families, were funded by dynastic capital, or were protected by inherited institutions. Even disruption gets absorbed. The system doesn't fight outsiders, it recruits them. And once inside, the rules change. This is where, honestly, viewers usually get angry, because we're told, vote harder, protest louder, pick the right side, but look closer, political parties rotate, ideologies flip, public outrage cycles, yet defense contractors stay funded, banks stay protected, corporations stay subsidized. Why? Because political leaders are temporary. Dynasties think in centuries, a senator thinks in terms, a dynasty thinks in bloodlines, and while we argue over left versus right, they quietly ensure the game itself never changes. Here's the part most people miss. This isn't a secret meeting in a dark room. It's not a master plan. It's inheritance. If your family owns land, controls capital, shapes law, funds institutions, you don't need coordination. The system already favors you. Your children inherit better education, better connections, better legal protection, better risk tolerance. History doesn't repeat because people are evil. It repeats because advantages compound. So here's the real question. If power is inherited, if history is shaped by bloodlines, if revolutions only change the surface, then what does change actually look like? And that's the uncomfortable silence. Because recognizing dynastic power doesn't make you hopeless. It makes you aware. Awareness doesn't overthrow families, but it breaks the illusion that history is random, that outcomes are accidental, that power resets every generation. It doesn't. It accumulates. We're standing at the threshold of a new era, one defined by the relentless advance of artificial intelligence, the rise of automation in every industry, the spread of digital surveillance into every corner of our lives, and the explosive growth of private space exploration. Nearly every aspect of our world is being transformed, privatized, and reimagined at a pace that would have seemed impossible just a generation ago. The rules are changing, and so are the players. But as these seismic shifts unfold, it's important to ask, who is truly positioned to benefit from this new world? It's not the average voter, whose voice is often drowned out by powerful interests. It's not the everyday worker, whose job security is threatened by automation and global competition. It's not even entire nations, which can be outmaneuvered by private interests. The real winners are families, dynasties with deep roots, vast resources, and a long-term vision. These dynasties don't just adapt to change, they anticipate it, shape it, and sometimes even accelerate it. For them, change isn't a threat, it's an opportunity. They have the means to weather any storm, the connections to influence policy, and the patience to play the long game. While the rest of us react, they strategize. The most dangerous misconception is believing that the world is simply run by chaos. Chaos feels random, uncontrollable, and impossible to predict. But the truth is, beneath the surface, there are systems, networks of power, influence, and wealth that can be studied, understood, and even anticipated. These systems are built on centuries of knowledge, strategy, and careful planning. When you start to recognize these patterns, you stop asking, why does history keep repeating, and start to see the mechanisms at work. You realize that what looks like coincidence is often the result of deliberate action, and that the same families and interests appear again and again at the center of major events. The real question isn't whether history repeats itself, but who stands to gain each time it does. This isn't about paranoia, it's about pattern recognition. By understanding the systems and the players, we can finally begin to see the world as it truly is, and maybe, just maybe, change the game. In the next video, we'll break down how modern dynasties hide in plain sight, often right under our noses, shaping the world in ways you might never expect or notice, and we'll reveal why most people mistake true power for simple popularity, missing the real forces at play. If this video unsettled you, good. That means it worked. Don't forget to subscribe for more eye-opening stories.